anyway, this morning, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Danielle Mitchell, who's going to talk to us some about healthcare, some about her campaign to replace Chuck Fleischman as our congressman. And it's a really wonderful time to have this program with the Trump shutdown and they're in the wake of in the wake of the women's marches yesterday, and I think there are now and there's still 5 or 6 weeks in most states to the filing deadlines, but I think there are already more than 400 women running for congressional seats, either House or Senate, mostly House. So it's going to be an interesting year as we move forward. And Dr. Mitchell grew up in a not very wealthy family, and where there was a great deal of problems with health insurance, and I don't want to try to tell her story. She has an innovative medical practice here that I think she'll tell you a little more about. And at any rate, I would note that if Google's up to date, Dr. Mitchell does not yet have a primary opponent. Is that
correct?
Okay.
Correct.
I'm sure you're not out there looking for one.
There's pluses and minuses to both sides of it.
Okay. But I would say to this group that if there are other Democratic candidates, I'd be happy to invite them to come and introduce themselves to you as well. I would even be willing to invite Chuck Fleischman, but I don't know that we would be high on his.
Let us know ahead of time so we can stay home.
At any rate, Dr. Mitchell, this is your group.
Thank you guys, and thank you guys for having me this morning. I appreciate it. Before I start, I do want to draw your attention over here to a couple of items on the table. So today the talk is really going to focus on what's the actionable items, and so we have over here voter registration forms. So if you guys would like to take some of these, and I encourage you to take some, we're going to be talking about briefly on helping people to restore their voting rights, and so there's pamphlets that you can come by. We have just a couple of these, but this is a really important discussion. We also have free swag. Everyone loves swag. So we have bumper stickers, and I encourage you, if you pick them up, put them on your car. Don't put them on the side of a desk where no one's going to see it. This little thing right here is actually helping to change the elections, because this is literally like our houses, our palaces, right? And when we put yard signs up in front of our house, it's endorsing your palace, right? And our vehicles are also a very similar thing, and these are mobile yard signs. So you can go all around in the community, and if you don't want to stick it to the bumper, tape it to the inside of the window. This is really what's helping people, I think, have the ability to come out and say, hey, yeah, I'm a Democrat, or I'm an independent, or I'm a progressive Republican, and I support democracy. So these are really important. If you would like some business cards as well, please feel free to pick up some of these. And we have buttons, so get some buttons. And for people who know business owners that might want to put up like a business window flyer, we have these as well. So please feel free to grab any of this stuff, and I've got more if you need some. And we have a sign-up sheet. If you have not been receiving our newsletters, please put your name on here, because this is really important for us to be able to stay in contact with you, give you our newsletter. If you want to volunteer with us, that's how we keep track of that. So without further ado, and thank you, Frank, for the introduction. I appreciate it. So how many people have heard, by show of hands, how many people have heard about my campaign? Okay, all right, so we have some faces of people in here that may not have. So to give you guys a background briefly about who I am and where I've come from and why I'm running, Frank was is absolutely correct. I've come from absolute struggle. I came from a family of 6. We were a working poor family. We really, we struggled. There was, several memories in my mind of how, by the time I was in 6th grade, I had attended 6 different elementary schools, because the reality of my situation is that we were either having to move for work or we were being evicted from our home. And my dad, he lost his union job. He worked in construction. My mom was a school bus driver. And when my dad would lose his union jobs, we would lose our health insurance. So much of my life growing up, we didn't have access to health care or health insurance. My younger brother, one of my younger brothers, suffered from epilepsy, and my parents would oftentimes have to borrow money to pay for his life-saving medicines. And one of the bills eventually that we couldn't pay was the doctor's bill. And my brother and my parents were denied access to health care to see the neurologist. And it was 3 weeks later, after he was denied health care, he died in our home from a seizure. And he was 13 years old when that happened. So growing up uninsured, and definitely in, I think, an element of struggle, I realized very early on that I had to do better. And I had to break that cycle of poverty. And the way to do that was by going to school, learning a job skill, learning something that would help extract me. So I was the first of my family to end up going to college. Yesterday, how many people were at the Women's March yesterday? All right, so yesterday I also shared a very lesser known part of my struggle, which is in my speech at the end of the march, I talk about how people think that everybody always wants to be an encourager of others. But my mom actually told me that I wasn't going to go to college. And I had to get my parents' tax information to fill out my FAFSA forms. And my parents hadn't filed their taxes in like 5 or 6 years. And when I asked my mom if they would do that, she told me that I didn't need to worry about it because I wasn't going to go to college. And that was when I was 16. And regardless to say, we really butt heads over that. But they did eventually fill out their tax data, and I learned later on that that was not out of a moment of anger of her towards me. It was because she, at a very young age, was denied the opportunity to go to art school. She's a gifted artist, as we later found out, and in her stories and struggles, she was offered a full ride scholarship when she was young, and her mom would not let her go. So it was kind of repeating this cycle of oppression, if you will, and I stuck with it. Here I am. I'm a physician today, family medicine physician. I work in Hickson. I've taken care of close to now 1,400 people in and around the Chattanooga area. And I've struggled with, keeping the doors of my clinic open, as well as my own health issues. People don't earn disease like we're being told, I think, in the current state of affairs. Disease happens. And one of the things I saw with my patients is that if we didn't step forward and help people, all of us are going to be pushed off of this cliff. So, yes. Oh, did you do that? Check, check, check. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So when I was, seeing patients in my clinic, I really, my heart, obviously as a physician and taking care of people, it really spoke to me. And then when I became one of the people who was also getting pushed off the side of this cliff, because I was diagnosed 3.5 years ago with an extremely rare vascular disease. This was after I lost almost 100 pounds with diet and exercise, was doing everything right health-wise, and had completed my 6th full Ironman triathlon at that point. I was feeling great, and then all of a sudden I wasn't feeling great, and I almost ended up with a complete amputation from my right hip all the way down, and almost lost my life in the process of that. So whenever our government was trying to, I think, stand up for corporate interest and reintroduce pre-existing conditions, I was going to be denied access to healthcare because I've won the lottery of pre-existing conditions, just like a lot of people have. And it just gutted me to know that I have spent 20 plus years of my life in medicine taking care of the healthcare needs of others, and then in my time of need, I was going to have the door slammed in my face. And I said, if our government is willing to do this to somebody with my background and how I've been out there helping people in the healthcare arena for 2 decades and more,
we have to have people that stand up to this. So here I am. We've been campaigning for a year. There's a lot of issues going on right now, and the focus of today's talk is actually, we're seeing the game change. This is yesterday, and we had, it's estimated 3,000 to 4,000 people downtown yesterday. And it gives me goosebumps actually thinking about it again, because this is really, we know these, when we're taking the pulse and checking it every now and then, we know we're making a difference. So the focus of today's talk is really, where do we go from here? Because I'm all about actionable items. So today, you know, it's pretty easy to sum up how people feel right now. A lot of people, in fact, I dare say every single person in this room is probably concerned about healthcare, both for young and our elders. And I would dare say it's probably the most important item on the ticket this year for the election. So it's another reason when I talk to people about, like, why would you want to have somebody who is not well versed in healthcare and they're quote unquote representing us, of which they're not. We need to have people in there who know the inner workings of healthcare, and not just from a perspective of how the business models work and how to revamp those models, but also what is it that people really need in terms of healthcare. So it makes sense, I think, to be electing physicians, and to give you guys hope, there's close to 20 physicians nationwide who are running this year. Living wage. If it costs $15, or I'm sorry, if it costs, when you're renting an average 2-bedroom house in Chattanooga, this is an average 2-bedroom house, if it costs over $15 an hour to even rent an average 2-bedroom house, how are people expected to make it on $7.25 an hour? Tennessee has some really astonishing statistics. So we're #1 in the nation for filings of bankruptcy. I don't know how many people know that. We're #1 in the nation for the amount of minimum wage jobs available. When you go back to the bankruptcy statistic, it's healthcare that's putting people there now. We're #2 in the nation for hospital closures. We're 44th in the nation for health outcomes, 45th for deaths related to cancer and heart attacks. We're 45th for cases of type 2 diabetes. We're 50th in the nation for voter turnout. That's what I'm going to talk to you guys today about, how we can change this, right? So living wage is something that I'm a huge proponent of. Job skills. Obviously, job skills is going to encompass people who want to go to college, people who want to pick up an additional trade. This is really that extraction from poverty and how we help people change the cycle. We want to teach people to fish, but we need to give them the fishing rod to do that. So I look at job skills training and education as the vehicle to help people change. And when we're making that vehicle so expensive or unattainable, then we're going to continue to place people in poverty. So we need to be able to identify resource programs and constructively create those programs to function better and make them more accessible so less people are dependent on government resources. Discrimination. Holy schmoly. What a week to be talking about this when our very own quote unquote president is on record completely lambasting other countries and the roots of origin of a lot of our citizens right here in Chattanooga. I don't even think I need to say more about how disenchanted people are about what's going on in the Oval Office. Dignity. It goes hand in hand. I think people, I've almost wanted to create a medical procedure or a device that helps people's jaws stay up, because we're dropping them so often when we see these dumpster fires daily. And so I'm really, I think that we need to be restoring that sense of dignity to our leadership. Women's rights. Boy, that first picture that I showed you guys, 3,000 to 4,000 people downtown. I just talked to somebody who went to the Nashville March yesterday. There was over 15,000 people who came out in Nashville. Chattanooga made the national news in Occupy Democrats. Occupy Democrats put together a very nice synopsis of cities around the nation who were marching. Chattanooga was on. They showed live footage of our event. It was great. Environment. This goes without saying. There's the moral argument of we need to take care of that out there to actually have a sustainable planet to pass along. But we also, from an economic standpoint, we need to take care of that out there, because that is what takes care of us ultimately. So my campaign is very big about making sure that we take care of what's the surroundings that we live in day to day. So I make the argument, out of all of these things that we're really angry and upset about, we can voice frustration, but we need to take it a step further. If we are not satisfied with what is going on in the White House, then we need to put that guy in a box. And here's how we do it. And I dare say that little pig is way cuter. Way cuter. I would almost want to take him out of the box.
It should be a turtle.
Exactly. Exactly.
I kind of feel like maybe that's insulting the pig.
I know, right? Pigs are actually really smart too, right? So for us to be able to change this equation that's going on, if we have a Congress that is not willing to act on all of these egregious violations of human dignity and what that leadership office is all about, then we need to elect a new Congress. And that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about. How do we make that possible? And it's not just, we're gonna talk in some detail today about how we're gonna do this. So the first thing is knowing what's going on out there with regards to elections. How many people know that we have 3 elections this year in Tennessee? 3. And I'll be honest with you, I'm right there standing side by side with a lot of you. Before I became politically active, I had no idea that we sometimes had 3 elections in Tennessee. I knew about, midterms and of course, our August primaries, but I really didn't know how much of the workings are going on and what positions are in each election date. So we're gonna spend some time talking about this. The first election this year we have is May 1st of 2018. Now we always have to strategize and think, okay, well, if the election is May 1st, then when do I have to register? You have to register 30 days before the election to be able to vote in that election. So as Frank was saying earlier, we're literally now coming up on the first deadline to get people registered for this first election. And this first election is very important. This is actually our county primary elections. So for people who are running for county commissioner, if there's multiple challengers in those seats, those are people who are gonna be running May 1st. So people help me with math here. If it's May 1st, then 30 days before that, we're looking at April, and it's actually, the deadline may actually even be March. I have to go back and look at the website. And you can Google this, you can Google Tennessee elections, and this will all come up. But our job is to honest then. So if we're thinking about, worst case scenario at the end of March, the first deadline to register to vote is happening, then we need to be starting to act now. And there's multiple ways that we can get people registered to vote, and I'll talk to you about that. The second deadline is August 2nd, and so this is the primary. This is when those federal and state primary elections happen. So if I go unchallenged, which again, we've heard rumblings for over a year now, someone's gonna run, no one's running, except for me, so, and we're gonna go with it. And if somebody does run, I say, I'm all okay with that, because it's gonna bring more people into the equation to say, look at all these people stepping up to say, we've had enough. And number 2, it's gonna actually draw a lot more media attention, I think, to our race as well, which is always a benefit. And I'm very comfortable talking about the number 1 ticket on the, the item on the ticket, which is healthcare. So they better come prepared. So August 2nd is the primary, and then if I win primary or I go uncontested, then I move to the November general. Keep in mind, 30 days before each of these elections is when we have to act before that to get people registered. So, I don't know if you guys can all see that, it looks actually a little small, but we're 50th in the nation for voter turnout. So I half joke about this, but I'm half serious about this. I have never, ever seen a state like Tennessee that loves football as much as we do. We're nuts about it, and it's awesome. I absolutely adore how people are very loyal to their football teams. I wanna get people as excited as they are about football to be that excited about going to the voting booth. We really need to clean up our act here. So what are the goals, and how do we get people registered to vote? Well, the first thing that you can do is you can consider volunteering for a campaign. So, it can be mine, it can be other people. We have a lot of people who people are running now, a lot. You can go out and register for their campaign to volunteer, and those campaigns are actively getting people registered to vote through their appearances. So that's one thing. The second thing that we're going to focus on is how can we collectively as a group align with other similar interests, and we have to be careful when it's a non-for-profit, because obviously we don't want to violate any partisan politics things there, but if people are interested individually through these affiliations, lining up with some of these other groups, then you can actually help to get people registered to vote. So the Hamilton County Democratic Party, for those of you who don't know about the meetings, they're the first Thursday of every single month, starting at 6 p.m., and they're at the Iron Workers local, which is just off of Amicola. The party chair is Christy Wilkinson, and if you guys want any of this information afterwards, please let me know, and I'll give you resources to go find these areas. The NAACP. So they also have meetings, and their meetings are the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. at the NAACP office down on MLK Boulevard. Dr. Woods is the president, and George Calhoun is the vice president. I just had a meeting with them yesterday. They are definitely doing outreach with neighborhood associations as well as reaching out to churches. There's a great initiative, and I'll tell you about this. They've got a letter into the state right now, Trey Hargett, asking to actually extend the deadline or the voting day to Sunday, because they're trying to get voting initiatives organized right after people finish church. So there's literally like a ride share where people may organize carpools for the church. They're trying to, in some of the more vulnerable areas of our city, organize a free car to bus pass for that day to get to the voting polls. Because it's easy, you know, when you drive and you have transportation, but we have to be thinking broad here. Not everybody has access to transportation, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So that would be plan A for them, to try and get people who have just gone to church right afterwards, get them to the poll, and organize an official event around that. Maybe for the whole month of the voting block for that particular election, maybe every Sunday, it's like, oh, hey, and we're going to the polls now after church, so, you know, everybody stick around, we'll get you to the polls. If plan A like that doesn't work out, then they've actually thought about maybe for that month of the election, instead of having church on Sunday, they may actually do a special session and do church on Saturday, because if they won't let the polls be open on Sunday, then we could go on Saturday. So we're doing think tank sessions over this, and we really would love your guys' feedback. Other groups to line up with would be Indivisible. How many people here know about Indivisible? Yes, good. This organization, when it first started, they really were some game-changing moments with these organizations. So these are local chapters. We actually have 3 Indivisible groups here in Chattanooga. They're on, bless you. They're on Facebook, and I encourage people, I know people sometimes don't like being on Facebook, and I'll tell you, I'm secretly one of them. But out of necessity now, we're there because we have to get positive messages out there. And digitally, this is how we're going to reach, bless you, this is how we're going to reach our younger crowds. This is where they are. So, and there's multiple ways in benefiting from that, especially from a church organizational standpoint, where if we want younger members coming to church, then we need to go where they are as well. Let's meet them where they are. So this campaign and digital organizing is really a big part of growing an initiative. So if you haven't been a member of Indivisible, or you're curious, let me know and I can get you hooked up with the individual leaders here. Church organizations, us, right here. We have an amazing presence and ability to impact people's lives. So people doing just what we're doing here, forming advocacy groups, working together and identifying goals and deadlines and getting the boxes checked off. We want to get people registered, again, after or before church social events, and really making it all about, this is our duty to vote. We need to be active in our democracy. Democracy dies in silence, is what they say. School activism. So the Macaulay Macaulay actually has a Young Democrats Club. They have a Young Republicans Club. They have a Young Libertarian group. And I was talking yesterday at the march with a gentleman who was a teacher at Baylor, and I told him about what Macaulay was doing, and he's like, really? I was like, yeah. UTC has a political action group. So we want to encourage, it's not a partisan thing at all. We just want to encourage equal participation in each of those groups. So at a younger age, we can get people into the voting system and really teach it as a responsibility early on, so people continue to be politically active. Host a party. Who doesn't like getting together and having a party? This is a great time for fellowship and connection. So you can strategically plan to have parties before the election deadlines and before registration deadlines. So in your mind right now, what I want you guys thinking about is, the end of March, that's the first voter registration deadline. So sometime at the beginning of March, I need to be having a voter registration party. And then we need to be thinking in August. Okay, August 2nd is the primary. So early July is the deadline to vote, or to register for that election in August. So before July, we need to be, like in the month of June, we need to be having parties. So far we've got March, so far we've got June, and then we need to be having another voter registration party in November's November 6th, so October, so September. So that's the 3 months right there that we need to be, March and June and September, to be having these voter registration parties and events around our affiliations. And then we hold a second party right after that, which is get them to the polls. Get them to the polls and get them to the polls early. Does anybody have questions on how to register to vote in Tennessee?
Yeah, where do you go?
Perfect, okay. So to register to vote, today I actually have voter registration forms right over here, and so we can do it through the mail. So you just fill out your card right there. And I will say, do not take it for granted that you think you're registered to vote, because you would be surprised actually at how many people are expunged from the system. You show up at the poll and you're not in the system. So I believe it's within 2 years of inactivity, if you have not voted, you're automatically expunged. So get out there and get registered to vote and check your status just by re-registering. Or if you don't have your voter registration card, that's another key that you need to check into. You can register to vote online now in Tennessee, which is what I really tell people to do, because that's easy. You can Google, you can go to proudvoter.org, or you can go online and just Google register to vote online Tennessee, and it'll take you to the state's website. We can get people registered to vote right there. So that's a great question. Any other questions on voter registration before we move on? Yes?
Not for registration, but what about absentee ballots or voting early, or all those other ways of voting rather than on just that day?
Yes, exactly. So I like to think of it as not just election day, it's election season. And so we're gonna get to the polls, not just on election day, let's get it done early. Like shoot for, so when we look at early voting, and it's different for each election, but our website and our Facebook platform, as well as all of our social media platforms, we will be posting those deadlines. And of course, you can check into them as well. I don't know if we have an internet connection down here, but I can show you guys the election calendar as it's written on the state website. And everybody should have like a quick document to that in their phone, because there's a lot of deadlines that we have to meet. And so we need to be sharing the information about it and organizing around those deadlines. Absentee voting, wonderful question. So absentee voting, I believe and there's a bunch of stipulations there. There's, medical, like if somebody like with disability cannot literally get to the polls, they actually have to have a doctor's note certifying that. If you're a college student who is, going to school out of state or out of town, there's a bunch of stipulations. And so absentee voting, there are some qualifications for it, but that's why I'm telling you guys, go to our state election website and make sure it happens and you check it out. So these are common hurdles, and I'm just gonna be blunt because I think this is one of the biggest things that we're struggling with. Some of the hurdles that we face in trying to change our voting turnout is our own apathy. We have very short attention spans now. I mean, it's literally like seconds in some cases, and I want to encourage us to use this passion and this energy that we have to sustain us through this whole entire election season. And really just keep this on our radar, you know, so don't fall victim to the apathetic response, which is no response. We need to be acting, and we need to be acting now. So looking at some of the other hurdles, there's a lot of vulnerable populations out there that cannot get to either register to vote. Some people don't have internet service. Some people can't get to the Elections Commission's office to get that form. So we need to be reaching out to them. So that includes some of our elderly, that includes a lot of the vulnerable poor, people who are sick. We really need to be reaching out to them to be making sure, hey, how are you doing today? Okay, do you need anything? Do you need help registering to vote and voting? Transportation is often an issue. And so again, the NAACP is trying to actually work with the mayor's office to get bus passes that would allow people to get to the polls. Childcare, you know, these are things that we wouldn't even think about, but you know, or even, you know, your work obligation of stepping aside for a couple hours to get to the polls, and that's why we want to vote early so you don't have to wait in line for long periods of time. We really want to make sure that when we're looking at these organizational efforts, that these are all things that we're thinking about. Under transportation, we could easily, and this is something I think that the Democratic Party, I'm hoping that they're gonna undertake, is doing carpooling and going into neighborhoods and working with the neighborhood associations, and I can certainly give you guys information on this, where maybe one church adopts one neighborhood association and says, you know what, we're gonna come in, and on these days after your services, we're gonna try to get you guys to the polls to vote. Or we're gonna come in and do a voter registration drive for you on this particular day. That's how we're gonna do this. So we have to be thinking outside the box again. Restoration of voter rights. So this is, how many people have heard of this initiative and know what it's about? Good, so half the room. Okay, so restoration of voter rights is actually to help address people who have had felony convictions and to restore their voter rights. So at first I didn't realize how much of an issue this is, but we do actually have a lot of felony convictions right here in Hamilton County. To give you an idea, I had lunch several times over at Herman's Restaurant, and we end up kind of doing these impromptu meet and greets. I've met a handful of people who already have come to me to say, I was convicted of a felony 20 years ago and I haven't been able to vote. And they've been told all kinds of things about, like, oh, you need to pay this fee, and you know, you have to pay like the state a fee. And no, as long as that felony has had its restitution paid and it's been settled, then here's what you do. I'm gonna grab this form, hang on.
I want to show you guys this because it is so simple for people to do. This form right here, it's front and back, and the instructions are on the back. It's a blank form. It stays blank. They take it to their parole officer or to the county clerk's office, and their parole officer or the county clerk will fill the form out for them. And as long as all of their fines for the felony conviction, it doesn't matter if they've received infractions and fines for city or county, those don't have to be paid. As long as that felony has been addressed and restitution paid, they get this filled out and they get their rights restored. It gets the process going for them. So
Excuse me, are they required to fill that out?
they don't fill it out.
No, I mean the parole officer.
Oh,
itself.
yes, absolutely. The parole officer or the county clerk's office is the person who is supposed to fill this out for them, because they're essentially looking up to make sure that the felony has been, like, fines have been paid and restitution
They're
has been
required to fill that out, to help them fill it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, absolutely. This is state law right here. So,
What about the driver's license requirement? Tennessee, for example, and many others.
Yeah.
Republican states.
having an ID, so,
Yeah.
let me grab the mic here, so,
The question was, what about the ID law? Because a lot of people don't even have an identification, and you have to have an identification card. If it costs $25 to get an ID card, $25 is a lot of money for some people. So we really have to help, I think, if there's a large population out there that doesn't have access to those funds, then we might consider doing small fundraisers around that to get them their ID, which would also open up a wealth of opportunity for them to do other things like apply for jobs and those things that we need identification for. These are all things that we have to be thinking about. So I just, I really hope that as we start forming action groups that are going to really promote voter registration, that you guys go over there and grab some of those forms. The County Election Commission's office over off of Amicola has all of those forms there. And there is a woman over there who is very well instructed on helping to teach people about it. And that voter rights restoration booklet is also available there as well that you can pick a copy up of. Any other questions on restoration of voter rights? Okay. And then, of course, knowing our registration deadlines. If we do have access to internet service at the end, I'd love to actually show how to Google and find that stuff.
We do have internet.
Perfect, great. Okay, so here at the end, I'm gonna pull it up for us.
One thing you might do is, all the libraries have computer terminals. Leave instructions for how people can use the terminal to register.
Right
in the
there.
library.
That's a great point, because our public libraries are heavily utilized for internet access. And I'm proud to say, actually, one of the counties in our nation, the first county to ever do this, which was getting people registered to vote when they get their driver's license, either for the first time or renewed. That was my home county where I was born. So, which is a great idea. We have to be, I always think about, when do you have a captive audience? Well, when people are getting their driver's license, when they're getting their cars registered, we need to be like, hey, are you registered to vote? As a physician, when you come into my office, I take your blood pressure, I get your pulse, I get your temperature and your pulse ox, how much oxygen's in your blood, and I ask you, are you registered to vote? Because we got registration forms right in the front of our office. So it's a vital sign.
I apologize for dumb questions, but what office are you running for?
I am running for the 3rd Congressional District, U.S. Congress, so I'm challenging Chuck Fleischman.
Against the empty suit.
Empty suit, you bet. Yeah, absolutely. An empty suit who, by the way, on the day of the National Women's Marches going on yesterday, has the audacity to go out and attack women's rights. It's right on it. I mean, and I will say with a little bit of pride, he took his first official indirect swing at me on social media yesterday, which is huge. It's huge. First, in the progress of how campaigns roll out, first they ignore you, right? We're going through a big ignoring phase. That's his MO. They won't address you because they don't want to give you the media spotlight. Then they insult you. And we just made it to the insulting stage. The third is, then they copy you. And the fourth is, then you win. We made it to stage 2 officially, which is huge.
Let me ask you another question, please. Where were you born? How long have you been living in Tennessee? And
Good questions. Born originally in Oregon, I have lived all over the nation for my training as a physician. I'm board certified family medicine as well as non-operative orthopedic sports medicine. I was brought to Tennessee actually almost 7 years ago. And it was funny because when I got a recruiter called me and they were like, well, what do you know about the South? And what do you know about Chattanooga? And I said, well, okay, the South. That is an extremely medically intensive, needful area with regards to the health outcomes happening. The South is the obesity belt, the heart attack belt, the stroke belt, one of the least resource available areas of our nation for healthcare. And Chattanooga, they have a cheat sheet. And so, I came out here, I had 2 interviews actually. At that point I was working for our major hospitals, and I was eventually hired as the head team physician for our Division I university here at UTC, where I served the athletes there in their program for 2.5 years. First female team physician they've ever had, so I went in and dug my heels in and kicked butt there, and we really, you know, in the time period that I've been here, and the reason I stepped away from corporate medicine is that I wanted to make a change for people. You know, you cannot inspire people to make big life changes when you only have 5 minutes of time with them. So I opened my clinic up in Hickson, Tennessee, and we had a very different model at the beginning. We had half-hour-long visits. I'm sad to say that we just had to go to the 15-minute office visit because insurance reimbursement and private profit margins, they impact lives. They impact you guys, and they impact our ability to keep the door open. We've been there for 5 years now, and we have not received a single increase in reimbursement from any private insurance companies, but our operating costs continue to go up. And I tell people, here's the real talking the talk and walking the walk. Our current elected official, Chuck Fleischman, on his webpage will actively talk about how when he was 16, he was in McDonald's mopping the floors and, you know, singing the song of like, oh, you know, I'm a hard worker. And I looked at it at first, and I literally almost like snorted water out my nose because I was laughing so hard. And I was like, well, welcome. If you're doing that at 16, welcome to what every other 16-year-old was doing at that point. You know, I was working in the movie theater, in the concession stand and ticket window, and, you know, everybody's doing that. But you, sir, try being a 41-year-old female physician who mops the floors and cleans the toilets in her own clinic because the margins are that close to keeping the doors open for people. That's sacrifice. That's the walk. And so we're really, you know, wanting to make sure that people understand. You know, I know that a lot of people, I think especially on the opposing side, are going to try and peg me as the outsider. Chuck Fleischman's an outsider. He's a debt collecting attorney from New York. A debt collecting attorney who, by the way, won't bring up the fact that Tennessee's #1 in the nation for filings of bankruptcy. One of the biggest issues impacting Tennesseans, and he won't talk about it. So I really, you know, in summary here, and I'll open the floor up to questions after this too, is that I really don't want us to quit. We have, what I hope happens from here, you guys, is that you guys start organizing, like let's get this calendar of events, and let's start organizing voter registration initiatives around each of these elections, and then organizing voting turnout by doing voting parties and getting people to the polls. That's how, if we're gonna change what's going on in the Oval Office, we have to elect a brand new Congress. So I'm here and I'm representing you guys, and I hope you'll help me win this race. Thank you.
Let me show you guys real quick. The internet connection that you guys use here is, let me see, actually I might be able to pull it up using my phone internet connection. Is there a password on it, or?
You should be able to
Password.
get into UUCCRE without a password. If the signal's
there we
not
go.
strong enough for you, there's another password protected node right here in this room.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go
Let me ask a question while you're looking for that. And
through. Sure.
looking on the internet, I discovered that if I'm right, somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000 is what you have in the bank for your campaign.
We have raised in sum total over 50,000,
Yeah.
and cash on hand right now with our expenses is right around 31. So
But I also noticed that Chuck Fleischman has just shy of $1 million in the bank.
yes, so he came in.
So that's a great point. We have to, part of what I have to do, you guys, is fundraise. I absolutely have to. And I think in some ways, I hope it speaks well to you to say that I'm so impassioned to tell you about what to do that I forgot to ask you for money. Which, I mean, I hope that says a lot about my character. Chuck Fleischman came into this election cycle with a bonus, literally, of starting with almost $600,000 left over from his last election. And he will fundraise somewhere close to $1.5 million to $1.8 million. He is PAC money affiliated. All of his stuff comes from private corporations and some very wealthy people here within the 3rd Congressional District who are not interested in representing the middle class. They're not. So, for me to make this difference, I know money is tight, but if people can donate $5, if they can donate $10, $25, $100, $500 plus, this is what's gonna drive our campaign, because we literally, the things that is making the biggest difference in these election outcomes, you guys, is paying canvassers. Having canvassers going out and knocking door to door. That's what won in Alabama. That's what actually moved. How many people heard about the special election in District 17? That's an impressive election. This is in our own backyard, you guys. District 17, Mary Alice Carfee was the Democratic challenger. May Beavers has vacated her seat, she's a Republican running for governor. And the last time they had a Democratic challenger for that race was 2010. Mary Alice Carfee just ran. She did lose. But in 2010, the Republican won the election by 64% of the vote. But this Republican who just won only won with 51% of the vote. That was a 13% swing that we just saw. So if we're moving that 13%, and that was canvassers, they were out there banging on doors and connecting with people. I know that it actually takes about 13 to 15 bucks an hour to pay a canvasser. So when you guys are donating and you donate 25 bucks, you've literally helped fund me for a canvasser for at least 2 hours. I want you to think about it that way. What are you guys, not just giving away money, what are you getting in return? I'm hiring a paid staffer right now, which, by the way, if you guys know of anybody that wants to work a job of about 30 hours a week, and is exceptionally organized in terms of knowing like Microsoft Excel and scheduling appointments and making appearances, send them our way. We are hiring another additional paid staffer at this point. So, which is a good sign. We're growing, like we need that help. So, but we definitely, and I don't expect to get $1.5 million. I'm gonna tell you that, because it's comparing like apples to oranges. We are grassroots. And we, to say that we have raised now over $50,000 on grassroots donations is amazing. And some of the people in this very room have contributed to our campaign. And I'm like over the moon thrilled about how people are stepping in and helping this democratic process. We also, you guys will get kind of a sneak peek. We're about to knock down a 4th national endorsement this next week. How many people have heard of Brand New Congress? It's a huge, they're about to endorse us. Yeah, so this, and today and tomorrow, there's another big fundraiser going on. If you go to my Facebook site, Physician Women for Democratic Principles, which is an organization, national organization who has also endorsed us. There's about 8,000 plus physicians who belong to this organization, and they're mad. And they have been funding and doing fundraising initiatives for the 12 female physicians who have stepped up nationally to run. So today and tomorrow is our big fundraising day. So share that on social media, follow us. Here we go, elections in Tennessee. I'm trying to show you this, guys, this website so you know about it. Okay, so here it is. There's a calendar on here.
Is Fleischman willing to have a face-to-face meeting with you?
Yeah, so he, here you go, here you guys go, election calendar. So if you guys like try the Google search for like Tennessee elections, election calendar, there's all your dates on here.
Did
so-
you hear his question?
What was that?
Did you hear his question?
I asked if you think Fleischman would be willing to debate you.
I'd love it if he would. Strategically, he won't for
He won't,
multiple
no, I would
reasons.
think.
Number one, remember rule number one, which is first they ignore you. If we get to 40% in the polls, okay, so from a money standpoint, they're not gonna spend any money fighting us if they think that they don't need to. So we build our numbers in the polls by recognition. He's not gonna jump into a debate because that's gonna give us recognition. And I assure you, I was a debate student in high school, and we traveled nationally. Not that I'm ringing my own bell here, but I am. I'd love to shred. Like, let me at it, because they don't have a platform. He does not have a platform to stand on. And I've also seen him in past debates. He's not quick on his feet. So, number one, when they say that he's not gonna debate, he's not gonna debate if he doesn't have to. So we're pushing him into that arena of have to, and it's a very good sign that he came out and took a hit at me a couple days ago. So
What did he say?
he said on his website, it was actually the day before yesterday, that he compared their passing, it's a pro-life piece of legislation that they're trying to pass, and then he said it is something about it's unconscionable that a healthcare practitioner, or it's inconceivable that a healthcare practitioner would want to harm a newborn. Well, why say health practitioner? Because is it that your opponent coming up is a healthcare practitioner? And we actually showed the post when we discovered it. We're like, okay, I don't want to have the me moment. Do you guys interpret this as a swing at me? And everybody independently came back and they were like, this looks like he's swinging at me now. So, and he did that too the day before the Women's March. The day before, so talking about like being highly offensive to women's rights platforms, but also to be highly offensive against healthcare practitioners and pretty much calling them murderers. I've delivered over 90 babies in my career. He doesn't know that. I mean, it was very insulting, I think, to a lot of people, so.
How many has he delivered?
0. Actually, knowing Chuck and how he tries to lay claim for, doing everything when he just shows up for the photo ops, he probably just caught the baby at the end and then said he delivered it. Or cut the cord and, oh, I did it.
It would seem to me that the path to victory clearly requires a huge turnout in Hamilton County. And and I noted that there was huge urban turnouts in Alabama, for example,
Yeah.
and in Virginia. But part of the path to victory, it seems to me, is cutting into the margin in Cleveland and in the rural counties further up. And what are your plans to make it harder for him to roll up to really big percentages in those counties?
So let me give you a few pieces of data and then another, this is an opportunity. We need about 68,000 votes out of Hamilton County. 68,000 votes, which, when you look at the classic cycle of how voting turnout goes, midterms are the least active time for voter turnout. We think that's gonna change this midterm, obviously. We went back, I'm gonna share with you guys some of our strategy. We went back to 2014, the last midterm. We saw that's when Chuck ran against Mary Hedrick. Chuck pulled about 97,000 votes total for the 3rd Congressional District. We know now in another midterm coming up that he's going to get at least 97,000. And we've even been generous. We've said, give him a 5% bump. We think that Chuck is probably gonna pull down, we're estimating somewhere around 102,000 votes for this election. So we said, okay, if he's gonna pull down 102,000 votes, we need at least 103,000, and we're trying to gear for about 103 to 112. We broke it down also by the county turnout in 2014 for how many people showed up and voted Democratic. And we found out, okay, if we need 103,000 votes, bare minimum, we went back to 2008 and we looked at the election turnout in 2008 during Obama's election. Guess how many votes turned out? 108,000 for Democrats. We've got the votes right here in the 3rd Congressional District to make this happen. They're here. We have to go to them. So, if you want to help me go to them, one of the other things you can do is actually Thursday night at my clinic in Dixon, if you want to participate on our field operations team, we are doing what's called Vote Builder training, which is the program that is helping us literally reach in and grab all of your guys' data and all the voters out there, and we identify them by the strength of their vote, whether they're left-leaning, middle, and oh, just forget about it category. We're identifying those people, and right now we're going through and identifying people who have really like strongly voted left, because those are our potential volunteers. So when we identify those people and we create those lists, then we're gonna have our volunteer captains, which we're still identifying more people in this audience. Those volunteer captains then will reach out to areas and pull those groups of maybe 5 to 10 volunteers together and create a team. And then what we do later on with the Vote Builder training session is we then create call lists for you guys. So, I mean, it can be as simple as saying, hey, yeah, I'll come and I'll help learn on Vote Builder and I'll be one of your guys' team captains. It might be as simple as saying, I don't know if I have time to be the team captain, but I'm gonna do calling and canvassing for you. So any of those, at the end of this session, you guys fill out your information there on that sheet and put on there what you're interested in. And if you wanna do Vote Builder training with us, or maybe you're thinking, I'd like to be that paid administrative assistant, come up here and let me know after the talk. It's Thursday, 6 p.m. at my clinic in Hickson. We'll do Vote Builder
Where is
training.
your clinic?
It's over on North Access Road. It's 4206 North Access Road. If you are driving down Hickson Pike, or do people know where McCamey Animal Shelter is? Everyone knows where McCamey is. McCamey's on one side of the DuPont Highway. We're on the exact opposite side of the overpass. We're literally right next to where the old Democratic Party headquarters used to be. There's Memphis Drive right there. There's a janitorial supply place. We're that brown clinic right there in the corner of North Access in Memphis. So if you guys come by there Thursday at 6 p.m., we're gonna be doing that. Yes, sir.
Your opponent sits on the Transportation Committee. He lives not far from where that accident was in I-75, that those 6 people were killed or murdered. Not one peep out of him.
Right.
And he has to exit off that exit or the next one and get home. So he's really familiar with it. But do you know who his 2 biggest contributors are? U.S. Express and Covenant.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
a great point. That's
And
a
listen,
great-
don't be nice to this guy.
Yeah.
He's disingenuous, he's not nice, I'd stab him in the back. Really, he'll stab you.
Oh, he's already trying. I mean,
I mean,
again,
This
I
is a
do.
rat right out of the gutter.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, if he can't, the biggest thing that I look at is, you know, if he's a debt collecting attorney and he won't even speak out about all of the predatory lending. We're the predatory lending capital of the world, you guys. Did you guys know that? I mean, this is, and one of his big contributors is also somebody who is benefiting off of that lives right up in Cleveland.
Alan Jones.
Bingo. Bingo.
Could I ask another nuts and bolt question?
Yes.
Once the primary is over, what help do you expect to get from the county party and the state party?
And the DNC, great question. This has been a real X factor race. I will tell you classically, we're not expecting any help. And that sounds really like, what? But our Democratic Party, both at the state level as well as at our county level, in the past has not been as organized, but they've gone through massive reorganization, which is great. The reality of our county level is that they don't have money. They don't. And they're really working to change that and trying to do fundraising. But we're focusing on, you know, the actionable item of, this is a great example. We all have like a certain amount of resources in our daily lives. And I think in the past, candidates heavily relied upon funding from the Democratic Party. And I'm gonna leave the DNC out of this for just a minute because it's a separate issue. I'm not expecting any funds from the local parties, I'm just not. Some of the smaller rural counties, and to get to your other question, they've been great. Like I've showed up at Monroe County, I've been to 9 of the 11 counties, and some of those counties now, I've been there numerous times. And those events keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I was just at a town hall in Etowah, you guys, I don't know how many people saw that. Little tiny Etowah, love this little town. This town hall, which was hosted by Indivisible, it was a nonpartisan event, had over 80 people at it. 80 people in the Gem Theater. I mean, I was like, whoa. So we are starting to reach into those areas, these different organization events. I don't expect money from the state or the local, you know, especially like here in Hamilton County with, we've got a lot of people running, so, you know, it's just when the funds get split like that. Now, from the national standpoint, for the DCCC, we may potentially see some funding, but I don't hold out a lot of hope for it because they really put their money on who they think is like the racehorse that's gonna win. I think we all know from a smart betting standpoint that when you go to the racetrack, you wanna diversify your profile. And we've got skin in the game. Like, I mean, we've actually attracted the national spotlight several times in our campaign. But they are really kind of going with like putting their money into the people who they think will have a trickle down effect. So like Phil Bredesen running, Phil's got a lot of big support behind him. That's where they're gonna focus their resources. And it puts, I think, even more responsibility on us than to elevate our message. So that's why we've been big about knocking down national endorsements. Because, I mean, I was 4 months ago interviewed by the New York Times. That's not something that happens on every single campaign, but it happened for us because we know we've got legs on this campaign. We're gonna do this. Now, if the DCCC and our state and local parties, particularly here in Hamilton County, would recognize the fact that, yeah, we do, and we need help with like hands in there getting this work done. That's where we're gonna really, I think, go full steam ahead. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, it's been a struggle, it really has. But you know what? We've raised over $50,000, and you know, at the end of this race, if we could get 200,000 to 300,000, we're gonna do it. Like, we can get this message out there in a reasonable fashion with that. I won't have $1.5 million. That's okay. We just need to have enough to get the job done.
One of the things that, I know I've mentioned this before, we had a speaker in here several months, maybe it's up to a year ago, who talked about the Republican push back in 2008 and 9 for the down elections to get Republicans in local and state legislatures, so that they would be in a position when the 2010 census came out to be able to gerrymander. And that's so important this go around, because having people in the 2018, so that when the 2020 census comes down, that we'll be in a position to maybe undo some of that.
Right.
Right. So I wish that the national office would look at that more on a global basis,
Right.
like the Republican Party did.
Right.
Because that came out of the RNC.
Yeah. Did you guys hear the comment here from Marion? It was on gerrymandering. So, how many people know about gerrymandering? Just by raise of everyone's like, yeah, it's not a guy named Jerry. It's actually like, so the process of, you know, how maps are redrawn to benefit a potential win for one party. And right now, there's heavy gerrymandering going that's favoring Republican Party turnout. One of the things that, okay, so district lines are drawn based on the data that's collected in the census, and we're getting ready for the next census. It happens every 10 years, and when those lines are up for reconsideration and for redrawing, the decisions about redrawing those maps happen at the state level of government or local levels. So there was this big push, as Marion pointed out, to have all of these Republican occupied seats so they could push through these voting things happening on how to draw district lines. We have to have more people running for our local and state level elections, which I am proud to say. I'm gonna rattle off some names in my head. Some of them I can't release yet because they haven't officially announced. So I'll say, like, you know, I'll kind of give an asterisk to it. We have David Jones running. He's running for District 26. He's challenging Gerald McCormick, who is a do-nothing in there right now. And his billboards are plastered all over Hickson right now, if you guys are out there, and downtown Chattanooga. We have Roosevelt Gorman, who's getting ready. She's kind of semi-officially announced that she's running for Hamilton County District Commissioner. I think it's 3. A gal named Catherine Geter, I'm not sure, I haven't met her face to face. She's announced that she's running for one of the commission seats. David Sharp just announced a few days ago he's running for one of the county commission district seats. Jenny Hill, she's running for school board. We have, and I'm just thinking outside the box, we have 2 other people who have announced, we have Hakeem, and Hakeem is running for Joanne Favors' seat that she's retiring from at the state level. There may be a challenger also to Hakeem running for that position as well, and they have not officially announced. We have another person who is getting ready to announce to run for another state position here for district, I believe it was 27, if I recall. It's the one that the Republican Esther Helton is running for, and I saw some of her posts and I was like, please tell me somebody's running to challenge this. And then we got a side email saying, yes, there is somebody stepping up to that. Who else is running here? I mean, we have a lot of people that are stepping forward. We still have a lot more seats to fill, but we're trying to encourage people, you know, if you have time, now's the time to run. You know, I mean, if we don't have more people in there, then when all of these gerrymandering issues come around again, we have people to represent us. So that's a really great point. And Wisconsin is actually, there's a couple of court cases going on right now that may actually, yep, trying to challenge the issue of gerrymandering.
Supreme Court has agreed to look at some of those appellate decisions already.
Yeah, I do believe, and they need to. It's obvious, you know. I mean, to be fair, you know, Democrats have done it in the past as well, but I think here's the one thing that I like talking about in terms of things that are positive. I don't want to leave on like, you know, a negative note for all these bad things that are going on. Here's the positive. How many people in this room have seen a time that we're in right now where people are becoming as politically active as they are now?
Back in the 60s.
Yep, I was gonna say, a lot of people have said, you know, if you were alive, I missed the 60s by, I'm 41, so I was born in 76. When I talk with people who have wisdom and the experience of living through the era of the 60s, they're like, this is very similar to it. People are upset and they are speaking out. And as hard as this administration and that man in the Oval Office is trying to divide us, he's uniting us. He's uniting us.
We have time for like one more question, and I would just note that the 60s was a lot of things, but it was also fun.
You care to elaborate?
Oh, wait, we're gonna have fun too. I mean, I have to say, you know, being able to interface with so many people and really, you know, the sense of, one of the things that I'll say from a physician standpoint, I'll share with you guys some of our stories that I see in the clinic. I have seen a huge uptick in mood disturbance over the last year. I don't openly talk about it. I'm not a person to have nightmares. I've had 3 nightmares in the last 6 weeks. All of them have been about nuclear war. I've really seen, I think, an emotional plea from people in my practice, disconnections from family. I certainly suffer from it as well. I don't have the support of my family in my endeavors that I'm doing right now. They're very far right. They've gone as far as to actually attack me publicly about what I'm doing. And we're hardwired for connection, you guys. We're hardwired for it. We are wanting love and acceptance, and we want to experience kindness and show love to others. We're hardwired for it. Right now, I think we're seeing a redefinition of, you know, family are people there who they love and support you no matter what your differences are. And, you know, relatives you share DNA with, we're finding that our families are being redefined, and keeping that open heart of forgiveness and being able to, I think, promote the idea that love is a verb. It is a verb. We need to show people that we care for them. And through that showing of care and love, that's how we establish connection. And so I think just really moving forward and having new people coming into our lives and really trying to rekindle those old relationships that are so damaged right now. That's going to continue to be our challenge, but I think we can overcome it. And every single day in the Oval Office, it's literally a gift to us in ways, because I think it's helping to bring some of those people who are in the middle now, who may have voted for that side, but there's like a huge buyer's remorse going on. So those are the people that we're going to be bringing back.
Well, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
thank you for the courage to run as a blue candidate in a bright red state.
You bet, you bet. And Tennessee is actually classically, we're thought of as a red state, but we're not. 76% of the people in the north half of the district didn't even show up to vote for the presidential election. And here in Hamilton County, for our last presidential election, 64% of the people didn't show up to vote. We're purple, so let's get a little more shade of blue in there. Yeah. Appreciate it.